So, is the Caribbean citizenship the key to paradise? And does the price include a hammock and a coconut and cocktail upon application? We're going to be finding out more about Caribbean citizenship options today. So stay with us for 45 minutes. We have Alex Smolen with us from Latitude. I'm Chris Land from Marlow Bray. We help clients globally with second citizenship. We've helped about 300 clients globally, including Africa, Europe, Middle East, Asia, helping them with every program from Spain, Greece, Portugal, Caribbean, US, Canada. More from Alex. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you do.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here with you, Chris. I'm Aleksandra Smolen with Latitude. I am an investment migration advisor. I'm certified by Investment Migration Council. I've been in this business for 10 years. And I talk to my clients about Caribbean passports every single day. So, we have a lot of fun stories to share and some inside information that you might not be able to find online. So definitely stay tuned.
Fantastic. So you can ask us any questions in the chat. We've got our team of advisors behind the scenes who will be responding to you. You can either ask public or private questions. And what we're going to cover in the next 45 minutes, essentially, why are people choosing Caribbean passports? How you can buy a citizenship in the Caribbean for $100,000 and which country to focus on. But first of all, Alex, probably makes sense to understand a little bit why people would want a Caribbean passport. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences of taking on clients and why they've opted for these programs?
Mm-hmm. It's a really individual matter, and every client has their own motivations to get a second passport from the Caribbean countries. At Latitude, we came up with the acronym SMILE. That stands for security, mobility, investment or insurance policy, lifestyle, and education. So this would be like the main motivations that we see among our clients for getting a second passport. And we can walk through them really briefly. Obviously, security. Having a second passport is a modern day insurance policy, right? Especially in the current geopolitical climate. We've seen that with the COVID pandemic recently, where a lot of our clients with a very strong passports, for example, with the US passport, suddenly were not able to travel abroad to the destinations that were always visa-free for them because of how government was handling the pandemic. So that was the time where we had, basically open up a new market for investment migration businesses, right? The US was never the primary market. So that's a security, mobility, obviously, very big reason. There's so many people with the wealth or capability of traveling, but they are limited by their passports. And me working a lot with Asian clients, we see a lot of wealth, but most of the people have very weak passports, right? So with $100,000 investment, they're basically buying themselves mobility and ability to travel for business, travel for leisure. So definitely mobility is an important one. This Caribbean passport are actually very strong. I think a lot of people who have not looked into it, maybe they already have a strong passport, they might not understand the value of having 150 plus countries visa free with your passport within the reach of your hand. So that's something that we were talking about, right? Like everyone thinks that it's these are all small countries, small islands, right? Why would I want to have that passport? But they're actually quite strong. Yeah,
you're right, and it's solving problems such as family not traveling on the same passport. We have husband and wife, different passports, therefore visa issues going on holiday. We have The businessman wanting visa-free access to Europe needs a Schengen visa. Of course, certain countries queuing up at the embassy or applying, it costs money, it takes time. We have families with kids in the UK and parents only limited to a short stay in the UK. So there's a lot of problems people face with low-ranking passports and the inability to travel visa-free. So a Caribbean passport can solve that problem, and also can solve it very quickly as well. But a big headline for if you look on YouTube channels and social media, you'll see passport available for $100,000 US. What does that mean, and is that possible, Alex?
So it is possible. Usually, what we see online when we see these numbers, what it means is a minimum required investment or a minimum required contribution to the government. 100,000 is the minimum investment for St. Lucia and Dominica. There's a little bit higher investment if you want to invest in Antigua, in St. Kitts. Basically, it's double that, right? It starts from 250,000 US dollars donation. So, basically, if you're a single applicant, you will be able to get a passport for 100,000 US dollars but that will definitely include some extra fees. There are some fees that are not usually shown online. Those include government due diligence fees, professional fees, and a lot of administrative fees that have to be covered as well.
Yeah, so that the headline is broadly right.
Broadly right.
And in terms of drilling down on the options available, we look at the map of the Caribbean, we see Antigua, we see Dominica, we see St. Kitts, we see Grenada. There's lots of different Caribbean countries. How do you start with selecting the right one for the client? Is it a case of, which has the nice cocktails, which has the nicest beaches, or is it a bit more scientific than that? How would you work that one out?
So it's funny, but when you have when I see a client, it really for me it's asking questions, right? So the clients usually approach us and they say, I want a second passport. Tell me what should I do? And I can't really tell you anything till I know what are your motivations, right? So I usually start with a few basic questions like, why do you need that second passport? What do you need it for, right? So client will say, mobility. Then it's quite easy, right? Mobility. Where do you want to be able to travel visa-free, right? Because although they fairly similar, there are small differences. Like we mentioned, some of them offer visa-free to China, some of them offer visa-free to Russia, but not all of them, right? St. Lucia doesn't. So where do you want to travel to? So that would be a second question. Then are you in a rush, right? How soon do you want to have it? And then based on this information, we can, select probably two main options, and there's another like small details and factors that impact the final decision. For example, family structure, right? What is your family structure? Do you have siblings? Do you want to add your parents? How old are your parents? So this all little things will help us guide the client to the program that suits them best.
I guess what you're saying is personalized advice based on where they are now and where they want to be, with the time they want to solve their problem and the numbers of their family. So those are the variables that you're playing around with.
You summarized it just perfectly. This is it. And the worst thing personally for me is like selling a client a passport that he will hate, right, at the end of the day, or it was something that doesn't solve his problems. So it's really important, and very often we have clients that will come to us and say, I want this passport, but then through the conversation they realize that this is not something that will solve all their problems. So
so it starts with the motivation. How strong is the motivation? How big a problem is it for the person, the family in the first place? and then drilling down on the best solution with the quickest amount of time and the least amount of money ultimately.
Exactly. We didn't talk about the cost, right? This is also an important factor for some. For some people, the cost will be the major factor. So they want something that's the cheapest. They don't care. And this would be usually a client that needs that passport for something like international school application, right? Because they and I had a client like that. It was a client from Japan, clients from Korea, South Korea do it all the time. They want to send their kids to international schools, and they need to have that second passport. So they don't really care how strong it is. They just want to have the cheapest option. So they don't waste money because they already have strong passports as family. And and for some people, it's like trivial things like I had a client that was interested in a place with the strong cricket, because he's interested in cricket and he wanted to live there. And,
would he be a British guy at all?
He was, yes, indeed.
Brits loving cricket in retirement, it's a familiar story.
That was a tough one. So I had no idea that Antigua is actually very famous and strong with cricket. And
of course,
that's where the Caribbean League, Cricket League, has their own training facilities. So I had no idea.
You're educated on cricket.
I've been educated.
As well.
So with each client, we learn more about these programs.
And that British client, did he have other problems he wanted to solve as well? Because obviously a British, passport is super high ranking. He's got no visa issues. He's got no travel issues. What was his motivation?
You're right. So a lot of people might be surprised, but there are some clients with very strong passports already that are applying for the Caribbean passports. For this particular client, the issue was it was a tax issue.
Inheritance tax, right?
Yes, particularly that was a matter of inheritance tax, and he wanted to retire in the Caribbean. So, with all the talks about UK possibly also implementing wealth tax or something similar to what US has.
Yeah, so we have inheritance tax, and it's 45% on your estate. So a client like that would like to establish a new domicile and live there for a period of time to ensure that he's bulletproofed himself against paying inheritance tax, or his estate would pay inheritance tax.
So when you think about it, for some people, this $100,000 plus the fees is nothing compared to what they would have to, what they can save with the favorable tax system. So that was the plan. He was actually considering, if something happens, if there is a global income tax based on the citizenship implemented at some point in time, he would give up his British passport, use his Antigua passport, retire there. And he was actually considering a property investment for that reason, because he actually wanted to live in Antigua for at least 6 months a year.
So that leads us on to another interesting conversation, Alex, in terms of the ways into these countries. So, there's an investment in the country. There's a donation. You can put money into bonds for certain countries. Right. And, broad knowledge of the Caribbean. You see every year hurricanes sweeping through the Caribbean, up the US coast, destroying property. So what are the factors that people should consider here? Investments versus donations versus putting money into, government bonds. What's the right way? What's the wrong way? What's your experience?
So from the government statistics that we see, and those are shared with the licensed agents, and 95% of people applying for a Caribbean passport go with the donation, the government contribution.
95%.
So there's actually like a crazy, majority goes for the donation, and there's only a small percentage that would go through real estate option. From our perspective, we also usually lean towards or advise clients on donation. The reason why, a lot of clients are thinking, I prefer to invest 200,000, let's say, for in Dominica, right, or St. Lucia. I prefer to invest 200,000 in a property than donate 100,000 plus fees, because they're thinking about it as like something that the money that they can get back. It's an investment. but we need to remember that these programs are not designed and structured with high rates of return on your investment in mind. Your return on investment is your passport. So if you invest the bare minimum, what you're usually getting, it's a sharehold in a resort, government-approved development that might be very difficult to liquidate after the required holding period of 5-6 years.
It's interesting. I mean, my background is wealth management. I've been advising clients for the last 17 years on their finances. And the key point here is not all investments are created equal. Giving an example, you could put 300,000 plus into Caribbean real estate. Your question mark then is your exit strategy. Who's going to buy that off you, and what's the value going to be in the future? Whereas going down the donation route, you could put $150,000 in, invest the remainder, put it in an S&P 500 tracker. You kind of know what they'll probably do in the next 5 years in terms of return. You've got liquidity to it. You can get cash back from that all the time. So you're looking with the numbers. If 95% are doing the donations, we can now understand the logic of perhaps why they're doing donations rather than investments. But coming back to the British guy, if he wants to retire, he needs a place to live, and he's getting a passport as well. So that's
and he's willing to drop a higher amount on this purchase, right? He was going for a premium, and when it comes to someone with if they want to spend more money, they can get a nice freehold unit. That it would be easier to liquidate eventually. But totally, as a finance guy speaking, right? That's what I usually use as the way to explain that to client. Donate less and use the rest of the money that you would waste on that real estate investment to really invest it in a products that are designed to bring you profit. Makes more sense. Or even if you really want to have a property in the Caribbean, don't buy it buy it separately from the passport investment. Then you are not going to be limited by the government approved programs, right? Because then it's like you can only choose from this few resort properties, and you have to spend certain amount, right? When you invest separately, you don't have these limitations.
And it leads us on to another interesting point of again, my financial planning background, inflation. We've all battled higher prices over the last few years, whether it's the price of fuel, the price of our groceries, the price of travel, airline tickets, they've all gone up. And it seems like the price of Caribbean passports is going in that direction as well.
Correct.
Why is that? And, how do you see the future of, the minimum levels, this headline of buying for $100,000? Could that be around in the future? And what's the direction of travel with these prices for the Caribbean islands?
That's a really good question. And, it's March already, but we've been discussing trends for 2024 for investment migration industry internally within Latitude. And one of the things that we think is going to happen is that, scarcity of the programs, there's going to be less and less options as a lot of programs are shutting down. And then on the other hand, there's also going to be a volume of application rising, and we've seen that through COVID, and that translates into longer processing times. And another thing is the investment amount going up, and partially is I guess it's a trend right now. It might be sometimes I think maybe it's political. Countries are becoming a little bit more protective, and there's a big push from European Union on the Caribbean Citizenship by Investment programs, where what they would like to see is lowering the volumes of applications, so less people will get the passport, but the revenue, the total foreign investment into these countries will remain the same with the higher investment amount. And that's what some kids did last year as a response to European Union requests. They more than doubled the contribution amount and investment amount. So that's going to be a trend. We might actually see it happening this year. So I don't want to. some people might think we're trying to sell people these programs, but it's honest advice. If you are thinking about getting one of these passports, do it sooner than later, because they might really all become very expensive at some point this year.
It's very much the domino effect. When one goes, it's very easy for the others to follow the same.
Exactly.
And of course, if they can gain the same amount of revenue, well, they've lost nothing in theory.
Mm-hmm.
So coming back to problems people are trying to solve here, generally people want EU access, UK access, US access, and perhaps Commonwealth country visa free. So are there any particular Caribbean countries that you'd pinpoint here as the most efficient in terms of time and the ones that give the best outcomes in terms of visa-free access?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So there is a country that this year is probably the best option in terms of visa-free access to European Union, UK, and actually China and Taiwan, which is like the only country that offers both, and it's Antigua and Barbuda. Yeah, and the price point is a little bit higher. The minimum required donation contribution is 130,000 instead of 100,000 for Dominica and St. Lucia, but the processing time is currently the fastest among the Caribbean passport programs, with something between 6 and 7 months.
Okay, interesting. So there's an opportunity there to get in at current pricing and giving them a solid outcome in terms of visa-free access to EU, UK.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's Antigua. We see it changes every year. Based on the different little differences within the programs and investment opportunities between these countries. But definitely this year, Antigua, even with the 5 days residency requirement, that's scary for some people, depending, where they applying from.
So you have to have 5 days in the country in the first 5 years, right? So reality is you're just in a holiday in the Caribbean. So
not bad.
It's not a bad heart. No hardship.
Should be nothing to complain about, but if you're in Asia, then it just probably takes a 24 hours or more to just to get there.
You need to transit via the US. So what we've learned here then, in terms of every client's different. We look at the motivations, we look at the outcomes they want, we look at the budget they're comfortable with, and we look at the number of family members they're bringing through the application, and then we can drill down. We have a range of countries and the variables to consider, like a chart that we take clients through. In terms of the application process, first of all, we recommend a one-to-one call with an advisor. We then issue a quotation, and that's valid for 2 weeks, and that'll show the timeline of payments. Of course, there's a system here in place, a very fair system, whereby you're paying by each stage as you go through the process. So you're not putting a lump sum up front. We're only going to bill you or invoice you once you're guaranteed for the outcome, right?
Correct. So there's a timeline of payment where we obviously, will charge a retainer to onboard you. And the reason why we do it is because most of the job is done prior to submitting the application, right? We need to build up the case, compile the files, which we can guide you through. And the second payment is right before submitting the application to the government, and this includes the government due diligence fees and a few government processing administrative fees. But the biggest chunk, the actual contribution, is only made upon pre-approval. So the government will review your application, do the third-party due diligence on you, et cetera, and once you get your pre-approval, only then they will ask you to make the donation contribution. Or if you invest in the property, that's where you have to
that's the stage.
Invest. Yeah, so that's the stage. So it's good because you are not risking much. We usually, we always do our pre-onboarding due diligence to see if there are any red flags we need to address, if the client is eligible for application, So we do our part, and by the time the application is ready, we have fair confidence that there's not going to be an issue. They will get through. Yes, correct.
Okay, and in terms of any tips, to give people confidence of the process here, one of the biggest fears then we speak to clients is, will I be refused? How long will it take? What if I can't get my documents together? Particularly if you've got a large family. So, correct. Any tips here, or any ways to overcome those fears for clients?
You work with professionals. How it works with Latitude with us, how we usually do it is prior to making any payments to us, we do go through the checklist, make sure that the client is able to provide all the documents. And, the list is quite straightforward, but actually there's certain level of flexibility with all the documents. So we are able to work around it. If there's, some countries, let's say, don't have ID, right? Japan, they don't really have like IDs there, apparently, especially if you're not residing there. Then we, come up with certain affidavit, etc. So we definitely assist the client with getting these documents. We are able to tell him where to get it from, or get an assistance with getting it locally, whatever they're based. A lot of his applications are done completely remotely, especially during COVID. There were clients from all over the world applying with us, and it was, we've never seen them in person, never met with them. So documents, it's not as scary as you think, as you look at it, if you work with a team that can guide you.
Yeah, so I think the message is trust the process, trust the track record.
Exactly.
All these numbers are published on the websites of these countries as well, in terms of how many people go through each program.
That's true.
Each year. There's a huge amount of information that you can see online in terms of transparency and detail here. But of course, each application is confidential. So your application isn't going to be disclosed to the country of your birth or the country that you're living in.
Correct. They don't share this information. And it's a good point. This in general, Caribbean countries, the approval rates are quite high. With the pre-onboarding due diligence, like if there's something in your background that it's a definite no, we will tell you, so you don't waste your time. We don't waste your time. So approval rates, and the major things that are looking for. Usually, when a client asks us, "Can I be approved? Will my case be approved or rejected?" It's like, only you can answer this question, to be honest, right? Is there anything in your background?
Know that fast.
Is there anything in your background? Is there anything you need to share with us? And then we are able to advise based on that, because for example, politically exposed people, the fact that you had some connection with the government or you work at the government previously doesn't completely mean that you can't apply for these passports, but you might need to. We are able to tell you if it's going to work or not.
Yeah, fantastic. So I think we've learned a lot in terms of the process, the options available, the timescales, the factors to consider. The key is every client is different, so we encourage you to consult us for tailored specific information. We work very closely with Latitude. And finally, if you like the content that we've got, please feel free to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're growing our followers significantly on all social channels. And we get a lot of questions as well asked through our social channels. So we're always happy to cover those one-to-one. But thanks for joining. It's been a fantastic time with Alex.
Thank you so much.